Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this live episode of Think Business. What is your why edition with Maggie Cook, America's success speaker. We are looking forward to talking with Anthony Treas today. Anthony, your story is a great one. We've got 3 coaches on this today, which is great. We got hopefully a lot of coaching that we're going to do. So this is exciting. So couple of things. I want to fix my camera. For some reason, it's like delayed. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it is. But whatever, it is what it is. Anthony served 8 years in the U.S. military as an Iraq war vet. After his deployment to Iraq, Anthony struggled with PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Inspired by his mental health struggles, he launched the Strongman Podcast to provide men with empowering messages to thrive in their health, their wealth, and their personal performance. Maggie, you know Anthony from a conference that the two of you were in. So I'm going to let you kind of take the intro from there. Anthony, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for being with us, Anthony. So I met Anthony. He actually runs the Entrepreneur Latino Summit, and he asked me to come speak. And I thought he would be a great guest because he has some things that I can relate to. And I think that this would be a great message, especially for the times that we're going through with COVID and how important it is to have a sound mind and also a great health so that you are performing and are staying safe and strong. So welcome to the show, to the live. Yeah.
So why don't you maybe start off and talk? Let's go back. First of all, thank you for your service, Anthony. Why don't we go back and start talking about, I think a lot of people struggle with anxiety and depression, especially now as we sit here on January 28th, 2021, especially with COVID and many people feeling isolated, especially I think a lot of our senior community who, don't have a lot of people around them. How does somebody, I'd love to start here, ask for help? Because I think that's a hard thing to do if you're not used to it.
Yes, absolutely. And, it's going to be different for everyone. And I know for me in my struggles, I ended up getting to a point where I had to accept that I needed help. And that was very difficult, especially because I had never felt that way before. I'm talking about pre-Iraq, going to the Iraq war. I've never felt any anxiety, never felt claustrophobic in my own house before, never had these feelings of just like doom and not being able to break out of it. And I got to the point where I did eventually need to get some help. This was not me. It wasn't normal for me. I had never, I think back to those days too, because it's not like, I've been able to develop skills over time to be able to deal with that. But I think I had a great, somewhat foundation before I went to the Iraq war. But when I came back and I began to suffer from anxiety and depression and claustrophobia and different things that I hadn't felt before, for me, it was luckily, at the VA at that time, our debriefings, they made it allowed us to be aware of the resources that we had available to us. And for me, I eventually took the leap and went and got help. And so for many people, men and women, it's going to be different. I think one of the main reasons why because I can relate with men, and is that oftentimes men are reluctant to ask for help. And we usually, it's like the last thing, right? The marriage is crumbled, we've lost our job, or we're not performing well. And it's like, okay, I need some help, when things could have been better, or could have been dealt with earlier before it got so bad, right? Before the marriage was bad, before the relationship with the kids was bad, these sorts of things. And so it's going to be different for everyone. And for me, luckily the VA did have a resource, and I actually ended up calling the VA crisis line. This is the line that it's kind of, I still remember the day that I called, And this is a suicide prevention hotline. And for me I still remember where I was sitting. I still remember where I was at in the kitchen. And luckily this packet that he gave us had this magnet, and I put it up on my refrigerator. And I just remember sitting there and thinking, just to get up and get that number and make that call. And that's what it was for me. But it took a while to get to that point. I just didn't feel right. Was feeling things I had never had felt before. And so it's really going to be different for everyone. But hopefully people are aware of resources, especially for everyone. But, VA does have those resources for veterans that they can reach out to. So definitely going to be different for everyone. And hopefully those that can provide services for people are making it aware and how they can do it and get in contact with someone as easy as possible.
Wow. Wonderful. So I have a question for you, Anthony. Could you share with us if you've ever practiced or have some tips on how to deal with PTSD and anxiety around, the events that you went through? Mm-hmm. Have you ever practiced anything that's helped you come to the other side?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that I have had a fascination for a very long time, and it's something that most people do not speak about, but I have a very fascination about the brain. And the brain is everything, right? Every decision we make is based off of from our brain. And if we're not thinking right, we're not feeling right. So one of the things that I realized is that if I was going to recover from PTSD and be able to manage anxiety and depression, all that's coming from the brain. So I had to learn how to deal with the brain. And so for me, even after many years, because I'm very much into meditation, deep breathing exercises, there's a number of different breathing techniques out there. I've done EFT before. And so even though I was getting some relief from these things, I still just didn't feel right, if you will. And so for me, I actually came across the book, Change Your Life, or Change Your Brain, Change Your Life by Dr. Daniel Amen. And I actually went through getting my brain scanned. And so it was very fascinating to see images of my very own brain, right? Being someone who's very passionate about and loves everything about what our brains can do. I was it was exciting to get this. But what
I think he froze on us.
Yeah, I froze a little bit. While we're waiting, one of the things for him to unfreeze, Maggie, that I always found fascinating, he'll probably exit and come back, is I was watching The Weight of Gold with, which is a documentary. I don't know if you've seen it, about the Olympics. And it's by, I don't know if it's by, but it's kind of spearheaded by Michael Phelps. And one of the things that they talk about are all of these extreme, incredible athletes these extreme athletes, they really go through some really mental anguish. And there's nothing in place in the Olympics when they go and they say, hey, I need help. And they say, basically, I'm paraphrasing, I'm using different words than they did, but get over it, right? There's nothing for their mental health. I'm talking about Weight of Gold documentary, where all of these athletes are talking about, like, hey, we need mental health. We're about to lose it. You'll hire and you'll bring in the best coach in the world to help me, do this little thing 1 second better. But I'm telling you, I'm struggling with my mental health. And the whole documentary is about how the Olympic board does not provide mental health for the Olympians. Have you seen that, Anthony? Oh, your mic is off. Still off. Can you hear me? Yeah, there we go.
So, yeah, I do not. I have not watch that, but I definitely would love to hear more about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was just saying, as we were waiting for you to come back, the ask for help, but then these groups, when a lot of these groups, and I'm glad to hear that the VA has it, but like the Olympic Committee, allegedly when this documentary was made, according to the documentary, does not have the help when it's requested. Yeah.
So going back to what I was saying about the brain is that once I was able to see exactly what's going on with my brain, like it was knowing exactly what was happening, because what happens is for certain pharmaceuticals, they can lower the activity of a certain area of the brain when it shouldn't be, right? There's areas where it should be more activated. So what happens is there was no guessing as to like what's going on with Anthony's brain. And just like it was revealing why I was struggling with anxiety, depression. It was because the areas of my brain where I was still hyper alert, hyper vigilant, were white hot, basically. They were very active. Well, I never would have known about that had I not gotten my brain scan, because what happens with pharmaceuticals is, and this is interesting, and please everyone do the research, but psychiatrists are the only ones, and I'm not going to say all of them, but for the most part, are the only ones who don't look into the very thing that they are trying to take care of. For example, a cardiologist will work on the heart, neurologist will see and look at the brain, these sorts of things. When psychiatrists are prescribing medication, it's kind of like a wild guess. Of course, they're going based off of symptoms and these sorts of things, but it's kind of a guess. And so what happens is people start taking this medication, and now you're just trying to test those types of medications out and hoping you get some relief. Well, after I got these brain scans, there was no question as to what pharmaceuticals would help those areas of my brain to decrease the activity, so I'm not hyper vigilant, I'm not hyper alert, which was a result of being hyper vigilant and hyper alert while in Iraq, right? I mean, it was life or death. So luckily for me, there are also natural supplements that I could take that would be just as effective, if not more, compared to pharmaceuticals, because there are other side effects from taking certain medications. So that, to me, in addition to deep breathing exercises, meditation, yoga, these sorts of things that have shown to be very effective in helping people alleviate anxiety and depression and PTSD. Now, of course, not everybody could go and get their brain scanned, right? But it is an option, and it is something that it is a useful tool to be able to see, like, it's not somebody else's brain or somebody else's signs or symptoms of what's going on. It was my brain that I was able to see and look at and diagnose and know exactly what was going on. So for me, it was also allowing me, I guess, personally, to know, well, there's nothing wrong with you personally, like you, Anthony, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just your brain works differently. And I just needed to learn how to deal with the way my brain works. So it was a powerful tool for me in helping me to deal with PTSD and anxiety and depression.
Anthony, when I was growing up in the orphanage in Mexico, when I came to the United States and I was in college, I was in the dorms I was rooming with another basketball player because I played basketball. And I would literally have these nightmares almost every single night. And I would wake up crying and sweating. I don't know if this is something you've experienced, but I would just wake up drenched and crying. And I did some things to deal with that made it go away. But the interesting thing that happened, and it happens to all of us in life, is that we think we've healed the past, but we go through experiences in our lives that trigger these events, and we don't really know what they are until it happens. And so this happened to me 6 months ago. I'm 41, right? And it happened to me that something triggered me. I went to sleep and I woke up and I'm in survival mode in the orphanage trying to rescue these kids
Yeah.
and do all these things, and I'm having these nightmares. And I woke up and I said, how is this possible? So what can I do? And I did something that I remember I used to do in the orphanage. And that is that I trained my brain that when I had those nightmares, I would wake myself up like that while I'm asleep, and I would literally be wide awake, and I would be aware that it's not real. And then I
Yes.
would go back to sleep and I would finish the ending differently.
Nice. Absolutely. That's incredible. Yeah, everything and it's I'm glad you brought up the idea of the past, because early childhood development, I know you grew up in an orphanage in Mexico. Early childhood development is so I don't think we're so aware. I mean, we know that early childhood development is, especially for the brain, especially those first 5-6 years of what a child experiences during that time, and is so can lay the foundation for future as an adult, where there is anxiety and depression easily on just from those first 5 years of experience. That's why for parents, it's so vital, even throughout our life, because in fact, our brains are not fully developed. For women, it's around 24, 25. For men, it's around 25, 26. The last thing to fully come on board, if you will, is the ability to know how the decisions you make today and how they'll affect you in the future, right? There's that disconnect, right? That's why oftentimes young people make some bad choices that end up, resulting in lifelong consequences for that, right? But it's so unfortunate because those areas of your brain are just not on board for you to even contemplate that. My first 5 years, much more than that, but the first 5 years, I had a father who was very abusive, both verbally and physically. And I believe my brain had fertile ground. I should never have gone to the military. I should never have gone to war. I literally had the right brain to suffer from PTSD and anxiety. And it all has to deal with those first pivotal years of brain development that were prime for any sort of event or accident or anything, especially war, that can result in suffering from anxiety and depression.
Wow. That's so when you coach, how do you coach people to heal, right? And not only heal, but almost kind of know when the trigger is happening, right? And it's like Maggie was talking about hers, and then being able to kind of talk herself out of it. The brain is the biggest muscle in the body, and so when you're coaching, right, we all we can respond or we can react, and sometimes our bodies, in less than a second, are reacting to anxiety. We don't even have control over it sometimes. And so how do you, when someone feels it coming or seeing it, how do you coach people to kind of either surrender or to kind of like remind themselves, like Maggie was talking about, where they are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing that I'd like to bring up is the difference between, counseling, therapy, and coaching. Therapy and counseling are more of helping someone in dealing with the past. For example, I've gone through therapy and counseling through my past and dealing with my experiences as a father, or with my father. The thing with coaching, it's about this present moment and moving forward, and not necessarily, of course, we can never erase the past, but it's more about like, okay, this is where I'm at. And now what do I need in order to create a better future, or the kind of future that I want? So I'm not necessarily helping people get through the past. It's this present moment and moving forward.
Yeah.
When it comes to a lot of the men that I work with, and it comes to anxiety and these feelings and these moments of depression, it's really about helping them to develop the skills. And there's a number of different ones. Some are going to be more willing to are willing to try meditation and give that a go. There's one, deep breathing exercises, EFT. I know where, during this time, during the pandemic, I was in my apartment I live in Medellin, Colombia, by the way, and I was in my apartment for 50 something days, right? It was like, and I began to feel myself starting to kind of get down and get just overwhelmed and I kind of felt myself kind of creeping back into this claustrophobia, this anxiety, depression. And so for me, I was very aware of like, okay, because I hadn't felt it in a while. It was like, so when I'm coaching men, it's really about understanding what is causing that to occur. Maggie mentioned something great. Like she was able to realize like what was going on. And I've had those experiences. When I first came back from the war, I would wake up and not know where I was at. You at least knew you were having a nightmare. I'd wake up and I literally did not even know where I was. It took my brain for it to come on board. It was like rebooting a computer where it's still kind of waking up, and slowly but surely my brain would kind of start recognizing, and I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm home, those types of things. So I've had those experiences, but with the anxiety and depression, it's really going to be individual, on the individual, what they're willing to try. EFT is great. You got your, tapping points. Not sure if you are aware of that, but EFTs.
No, I'm familiar with EFT. Yeah.
It's free. It's great. Studies have been shown already and have been done that EFT is very effective in anxiety relief, depression, and PTSD. So a number of different things, but dependent on the person and looking at triggers or anything like that. But coaching is very much about helping someone develop skills and moving forward rather than talking about the past and how that might be still occurring. That's more for therapy and counseling.
So what you're doing right now, you currently have a podcast, correct?
Yeah.
And it's called Strongman Podcast, or what's it?
Strongman.
Wonderful. Podcast. And where do people find you?
Yeah, they could find Strongman Podcast on any iTunes, on any really just about anywhere. And then there's also the website, strongmanpodcast.com. And it's quite interesting. When I started my podcast, and this was as a result, I was always this perfectionist, right? I always had this struggle of not putting anything out there. And I think, John, as a business coach, you probably hear this a lot, where we're these A-type personalities, right? We're like this perfectionist. We're not going to put anything out there unless it's perfect. And I remember I had just bought my one-way ticket to South America. I was in Bogota. I rented a bedroom, and that's where I started my podcast, and in a rented bedroom in Bogota, Colombia. And I was not going to let any perfection. I started myself. I recorded everything. I still have pretty much the same equipment that I have today. And I was not going to let the dogs barking in the background,
I get it. Yeah.
Let Bogota traffic stop me. I mean, I think if you go listen to the first few ones, you probably could hear it. But for me, I got to a point where, I wanted to start putting out more information out there for men to hear, positive messages and to help them to take back their health, their mental well-being, and what it is they want to accomplish, so that they can feel fulfilled and happy in their life. So definitely, that's how the Strongman Podcast. That's the story of how it started.
It's great.
That's wonderful. And I see also on your website that you help men who have some sort of health education and also professional health skills to start their own health coaching business. Is that correct?
Yes. After, so I started my coaching business, and, I had at one time I had a marketing company. And so I was very much an SEO expert, and So I was able to really rank my website very well and do all that. But that's kind of the long way, right? So what happened was I was able to achieve a certain amount of success within just a few years. And so I started getting coaches contacting me, asking, like, especially men coaches asking me, like, how are you reaching men? Because men's a very hard demographic to reach. As I mentioned earlier, we kind of like wait till like everything's crumbling before we even ask for help. And so I started, people started contacting me, and I started just seeing all these mistakes that they were making, that I also knew about them, right? And so I started noticing all these mistakes that new coaches were making that were coming to me, and all the money they spent on so many different things. And so I started taking on some clients that were brand new coaches, and some I was able to get them right when they started coaching, and others where they already had spent thousands of dollars and didn't need to get there. They didn't even know who their target market was. And so it's like, let's back up and let's get some foundational things started first, and then worry about the website and marketing and all that other stuff. So definitely help new coaches establish their business, because oftentimes, us coaches, right? I think we could all, so people who are coaches want to help people, but we're not tend to have the marketing skills or the business background or the copywriting or the email marketing. And oftentimes new coaches come in and they're like, yeah, I want to coach. But you're first a salesperson before you're a coach. And most oftentimes people don't want to hear that, because often people's, thinking they didn't want a sales job. They just wanted to be the coach, right? But you're first a salesperson before you're a coach. And until you understand the sales, there's not going to be anybody to coach. And that's a very hard pill to swallow, because it's, how can, learning the online marketing, the social media, the email marketing, the SEO, and all these things that tend to go into coaching. And it's a very huge disappointment for people who want to be coaches. Like, I don't want to learn that. I don't want to have to do that. But unfortunately, that's the thing. So I help them just develop that foundation, and then build, and then grow, and then start delegating things that they don't want to do, they shouldn't be doing, because they're the coach and they're doing what they are passionate about doing. So, yeah.
It's great. You're doing great things. It is, these mental health issues are always things that need to be talked about more often. And I feel like people don't. And there's this, I'm so grateful for the stigma going away, more so than many, decades ago, from our parents' generation. And and so I love that you're talking about it, and you're coaching people through it, and you're doing great things to heal people and help them in so many ways. So you ready for a quick speed round, Anthony?
Let's do it.
All right. Favorite book and why?
Ooh, that's easy. The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy.
That's a good one.
Love it. That's the book that I read before I went to Iraq, years before I went to Iraq. But and if I can add another, the Psycho-Cybernetics. I think we talked about it.
That's one of my favorite books. He invented by a plastic surgeon. That is such a great book, and he kind of is the father of the 3-week habit. And that book is incredible. I loved it. I love that book. Yeah.
And if people can try, one of my favorite things to do is to go into used bookstores, and go into the new age section, right? Because everything that's being taught today, like business-wise, that they were sharing this information back then. The Psycho-Cybernetics and the Power of Subconscious Mind were written in the 60s. And if you were telling people about subconscious mind and those sorts of things, we all have heard stories about the 60s and 70s, so we don't need to go into that. But that's what we know today. And they've been sharing that stuff since then. And I'm thinking, wow. And The Power of Your Subconscious Mind was written. I was thinking, this book has been around since longer than I've been alive. Like, why didn't I know about this when I was a kid?
I know. Such a good book.
Yes.
Is that the only rapid fire?
Yeah, I thought you may have a question.
No, I'm good. I just
All
wanted to ask, quickly ask if the pandemic has affected your business in any way. I know that the health area is very strong right now because people are trying to be healthy, and I was wondering what that was like for you, and should other people go into that?
To be absolutely honest, 2020 was one of the best years for me. Quite surprising for many people, right? Because we hear of the unfortunate things that have happened to so many businesses, and so I'm very grateful that I had my coaching program, or coaching company and business. As far as new coaches, I think it is great, especially going into it properly, right? There are things that and I'm certain, Maggie, you relate to this, that as your mindset grows, your income grows. And that is true for a lot of people. And I mentioned earlier that for many coaches, they get into coaching and they're excited to coach. They got their certification and all these things, but you're first a salesperson and you've got to know how to sell your services. And that is the biggest hurdle for so many people to get over. So as long as people realize that want to be coaches, that's great. But also know too that you're going to have to learn how to sell your services. And that's the biggest hurdle. And so when people can understand it's not going to be this zero to hero, right? Making hundreds of $1,000s, this type of thing, that you're going to be, as your mindset grows and as you change your views towards sales and selling. Because if you have any deep beliefs about sales and making money and selling, if you have a negative belief towards that, you're going to struggle, because you are selling, you are providing a service, you have to feel worthy. And if you don't, people are going to sense that, and it's not going to work. And so it's important to realize that that mindset is so important for new coaches, and understanding if you have any deep beliefs of negative towards selling, those are going to need to be changed.
Yeah. Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's great. So, Anthony, tell everybody how they can connect with you. And again, just kind of recap. I think I know, but who your ideal clients are.
My ideal, how to reach me, you could visit my website at strongmancoaching.com. That's my website that you can go at. Of course, find me on Facebook, Instagram. But the men that I work with are in their late 30s, early 40s. They've had some success in their life, but they're struggling with anxiety and confidence in that next. They put a lot of effort into other people's lives and their happiness and fulfillment, and they've neglected theirs, and so they're receiving the repercussions from that. And so now they're trying to navigate that purpose and that confidence and that drive in them.
I love it. Well, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. I appreciate and I'm very grateful and thankful for your service, as well as your story and how you're sharing it and how you're taking your tools to help others. I'm a big believer in many cases, we actually teach our pain. And so, thank you for teaching yours and everything that you're doing. And I wish you, all the best and great continued success. Maggie, I'll let you close it out.
Antonio, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros hoy. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Te deseo lo mejor. I wish you the best. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
If Anthony can help you in any way, reach out to him, strongmancoaching.com or his podcast, strongmanpodcast.com. Anthony, thanks. All the best to you and everything that you're doing. Maggie, same to you. Thanks for everything. This was great. Thanks for the introduction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.